How's it going? My name is Bryce, and this is my channel, Striving Intellect. And today we're going to be talking about an interesting piece of history. And as you can see, there's actually a picture of an Egyptian mummy, which is a mummified human corpse from Egypt. And this is a extremely well-preserved picture. And it looks like there was a hastily written name, and it either said Pottery or Ninu. And I think this is absolutely amazing find. A preserved mummy of this caliber is insane. But that actually brings us to the next part of this, and this is an article from the Britannica Encyclopedia. And this is actually from a article I found on there. It is talking about methods of mummification. Mummies have been an antagonist of horror-based media since Western societies discovered them. We have to admit, dead bodies drained of fluid and wrapped in linens can be pretty bone-chilling. However, the process itself is much more than just wrapping up bodies. It involves advanced scientific understanding of human biology and often indicates complex beliefs surrounding the afterlife. Many cultures spanning the globe were practitioners of mummification, and though it is largely lost practice, we remain fascinated by the profound scientific knowledge of the peoples who have practiced it. Yeah, it truly is something to see that they were so advanced that they could do these medical and scientific rituals and practices at an era where the majority of other societies weren't necessarily that far advanced. It is a fascinating thing. Obviously, the Egyptian Empire, or even just the Egyptians in general, very sophisticated society for their time. But I'll go on. The most recognizable method of mummification comes from ancient Egypt, dating back to 3500 BCE. In this method, a metal rod was first pushed through the nasal cavity to the skull. From there, the rod was manipulated in a manner that liquefied the brain tissue, which was then drained through the nose. The rest of the organs were then removed. The hollow body was cleansed with a mixture of spices and palm wine. The soon-to-be mummy was placed in natron, or natural occurring salt, and left to dry for 40 days. After the flesh was dehydrated, the body was wrapped in a layer upon layer of linen, between which priests place amulets to aid the newly deceased into the afterlife. A top coat of resin was applied to ensure protection from moisture, and then the mummified body was placed in a coffin and sealed in a tomb. The extent of ornamentation, the style of tomb, and the care taken during mummification process differed on the basis of recency, deceased, social class. So I guess if you were in a very, very low social class, then you probably weren't even mummified. Obviously, if you were in a higher social class, like a pharaoh or some noble or something of that sort, then you would have more likely to have extremely fancy and seemingly large amounts of treasure left for you in the afterlife. You may associate all ancient mummies with Egypt, but the earliest evidence of embalming was actually found in the remains of the Chinchero people, who resided in what is now modern-day Chile. Unlike the Egyptians, who mummified on the basis of class, the Chinchorro exhibited an egalitarian method of preserving the dead. What's even more interesting is, though they were mummified 2,000 years before the Egyptians were, their methods were more advanced. The Chinchorro approach to mummification was lengthy. First, a body was relieved of its skin, flesh, organs, and brain. The bones were exposed and were then taken apart and burnt with hot ash so to remove any liquid that would allow for decay. They were then reassembled with twig support. The newly formed bone twig skeleton was bound tightly with reeds, and then the skin was reapplied to the body, supplemented with skin of sea lions or pelicans as required. An ash paste was then painted over the body to ensure stability, and the face was covered in a clay mask. The finishing touch involved either black or ochre paint, which was applied to the entirety of the newly mummified body, most likely for reasons of conformity or equality. That's disgusting. I'm not gonna lie. That sounds like an abomination, honestly, but good for them. Obviously extremely primitive people, yet they had some pretty advanced techniques going for them. That sounds absolutely horrific. Okay, sorry, I'll go on. Oddly enough, you don't need to die for the process of mummification to begin. Between the 11th and 19th century, a school of Buddhists in Yamagata, Japan, called Shingon, including members who practice a method of enlightenment called Sakushinbutsu. Sakashimbutsu was, in the simplest terms, self-mummification. Monks, over a period of 3 to 10 years, followed a diet called Moko Jikigyo, or tree eating. Sorry if I butchered that. I do not speak Japanese. Tree eating. During this 1,000-day diet, monks ate only pine needles, nuts, roots, and buds from trees, which rid the body of fat and muscle and delay decomposition after death. After tree eating, monks removed food from their diet completely, drank solely salt water for 100 days, which shrank their organs and further mummified them alive. When a monk felt death approaching, fellow monks would place him in a pine box at the bottom of a pit. The box would be covered in charcoal with a small bamboo shoot through the top for air. After the monk's death, the tomb's airways was removed and the box was sealed. 1,000 days later, it was reopened and examined for evidence of bodily decay. If any was found, an exorcism was performed and body was buried again. If not, the mummy would be enshrined. That sounds like torture. Oh my lord. I cannot imagine how horrible and painful that would be. That sounds like an extremely terrible experience. Tree eating. That's insane. Okay, well, that's not something that I would ever want to experience. I'll go on. There are various other cultures that have practiced mummification outside of the three detailed here, including populations in Africa, Hungary, and Australia. And there are even cultures and individuals that practice it today. While many of us may see mummification as the stuff of horror movies, understanding how and why people practice mummification can help us to further understand our own buried practices and those cultures which utilize and still utilize mummification today. I'm not going to lie, I don't think that people should practice any of those forms of mummification. I guess they can do whatever they want to. Those all sounded absolutely terrifying. Okay, that was jarring. I apologize. So I'm just going to read the Encyclopedia Britannica for mummy real quick. And we have gotten some techniques and different types of technology from mummies. And specifically something that you might recognize is embalming. So obviously there's different types of embalming, but we still practice embalming today. It's a very common practice, right? So there's obviously things that we still use today. But I'm just going to read this real quick. This is mummy and embalming. Mummy, body embalmed, naturally preserved or treated for burial with preservatives after the manner of ancient Egyptians. The process varied from age to age in Egypt, but it always involved removing internal organs, though in a late period they were replaced after treatment, treating the body with resin and wrapping it in linen bandages. Among the many other peoples who practiced mummification were the people living along the Torres Strait between Papua New Guinea in Australia and the Incas in South America. There was a widespread belief that Egyptian mummies were prepared with bitumen. The words come from an Arabic bitumen, which was supposed to have medicinal value, though the Middle Ages mummy made by pounding mummified bodies was a standard product of apothecary shops. In course of time, it was forgotten that the virtue of mummy lay in the bitumen, and spurious mummy was made from bodies of felons and suicides. The traffic in mummy continued in Europe until the 18th century. That's disgusting. People were using mummified bodies as a medicine or something like that, and eventually they were just taking the bodies of felons. That's insane. Well, as you can see right there, there's some mummified cats. Sorry, that's me. And we can take a look at this mummified. It's like a body. There is a sarcophagus. Another mummified cat. It's a elephant. That's pretty wild looking. There's another mummified person in a sarcophagus. Yeah, I just thought all this was really fascinating. Obviously, some of it seems kind of barbaric or basic, but these were extremely advanced practices at the time and had very complicated religious implications. So I hope you guys really thought it was interesting as well. Please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you.